whole time.
Hi, and welcome to Performers on Performing. My name is Aaron Tornberg. I'm here with Bless One, who is from Lawrence and is here today to explain some of the history of Lawrence hip hop, mostly, right?
Yes, definitely. It's a pleasure meeting y'all. How you doing?
Yeah, we've talked before, and I thought he would be a great person to bring on the show and tell us all about the history of Lawrence hip hop and the history of himself and beat making. So, to start off, what do you do?
So I'm a composer, producer. I mostly do background music for TV and film and reality shows and sports programming too. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I started as a hip hop producer, but then I started looking for ways to grow in different avenues, and that's why I was like, wow, they use hip hop beats on these TV shows and sporting and movie trailers. So there's so much growth there. So I was like, let me get my foot in there. That's how I got into doing music for TV and film.
Well, that's not the first step in the story. How did you
Nah.
get to that point where you were doing TV and
Well,
film?
hell, many moons ago, yeah, I was a local DJ here in Lawrence, and like progression, most the best producers I would say they started as DJs. So I've been DJing. First started at family events. I was the only one trusted with the audio equipment at family parties. That's how I got into like electronics and into the music, and that progressed into getting DJ equipment. Just going to secondhand stores and buying two different turntables, ordering either going to New York or Boston, getting a mixer. Started DJing first, other people's music and remixing when I was a teenager and doing like middle school at the Brew School at Tower Hill. I used to DJ, help the DJ there, and then from there when I became like a teenager, 13, 14, I started messing with a 2 second sampler called a Casio, a small
Right.
little. It was 2 seconds, and I had bought a used 4 track, and I just looped those 2 seconds and added tracks upon tracks, and then bounced them to the fourth track, and kept on adding tracks. And some local rappers I'm doing the talent show. They wanted me to do the music, so I was like, fine, I'll do you the intro and some music for the talent show.
So what were you using for tracking?
I had a 4 track back. I don't know. Now it's digital. Now it's the computer that does it, but it was actually a mixer with a tape recorder. It was a Tascam. They
Yeah.
had a 4 track. Yeah.
So I use those as well.
Mm.
So for the people who are younger who never had to do that, you want to explain the process of what it means to have to do everything you're doing musically on a 4 track? Like, how did that work? What's the process?
The process, there was hiss because the tape got a little hiss, but that gives it that warmness. Tape gives it that warmness. I know now you have digital simulators of like a tape machine, so it gives you sort of, because when it's too digital, it sounds too clean. You need that warmthness, that hits your soul, and you can feel the bass and the drums and all the instruments. Because when it's too clean, I think it's too digitalized. It's too sharp, I think. But when you run it through a tape, it gives it a thick and a warm feeling to the material, to your music.
Yeah, I mean, it does have a hiss. I've used them, and what happens is you record a track, and if you want to actually be able to manipulate the volume of different tracks, you can on a 4 track, but you have to bounce it to another
So
track.
the four. So you have. So it's 4 tracks. So you have left, right makes the 4 tracks. But you're gonna need, if you're gonna add more than 4 tracks, you're gonna need that fourth one to bounce that first 3 to the fourth track, and then you have 1 track now of all 3 tracks, and then now you can add 3 more tracks to
Right.
to the original what you had. So you keep on adding on like you had a multi track recorder.
Right. And when I was doing it, it was a case of like recording a guitar, then going back, recording a vocal, then going back and recording another instrument that you want to bring in, like a
Drums,
bass
so
or
bass and then
drums or
drums, yeah.
anything. So with hip hop, I'm guessing, you had to do that pretty much even more because don't you have to layer things when you do hip hop stuff?
So in the early '90s, it was mostly samples. So on the 4 track, on that 2 second sampler, you will sample first the drums, and if you sampling something, a sample from the '70s or '60s, or jazz, soul, funk, rock, whatever your preference of sample source is, that usually had a warmth to it. And if you're sampling a whole song, a piece, a couple seconds, let's say 5 seconds, that already had bass and it already EQ because it's already been out professionally. It's been out as a record release. That it was a little bit easier to do because now everything you have to layer, even though you're layering. Either there was producers that either did it, they'll lay down a drum track and then they'll have a record on top of it, the sample playing and going back and forth and just chopping it. And another thing I forgot to say, I used to make mixtapes with pause. They're called pause tapes. So I used to make beats like that too, just loop, because that's how hip hop, because they didn't have the instruments and the equipment to do it. So they came up with the idea with the 2 turntables looping up like a 3 or 5 second drum track or a drum break and repeating it. So the same thing goes with the 4 track. You sort of almost like you had turntables. You stack them up and then bounce them until you.
Right.
Some people did multiple samples, maybe like 5 samples, and some
Right.
people were simple. It was either a drum machine and bass. Some
Well,
people
explain-
and scratching.
What is a sample in your context? Because right now, basically, samples aren't really the word for it. Now it's just
Now they call them
beats.
samples, but people are making their own samples by layering, making an original sound. I don't know if that makes sense. They're trying to copy how the '60s and the '70s used to sound through different interfaces. Either you have analog or digital. There's different VSTs and stuff like that make it sound like if it came from the '50s, '60s, or '70s.
Right.
There's different VSTs.
So they're
that you
just
can-
effects, more or less effects on which in our day.
We needed the physical, the
You had to have a
actual. Now
box.
it's digital. Yeah, now it's so it's all, I will say it's all on the user because nothing is better than nothing. Everything there's no rules to this music. You gotta make it the best sounding what you think. Cause even right now kids like distorted music. And
Right.
we thought it sounds like corrupted digital files. That's what.
Right.
And people like that. It's called glitch. There's a style of music for that. So for every type of music, there's somebody that's gonna like it.
Right. And when you were doing this stuff, you were kind of just experimenting, I guess, or did you have teachers who helped you sort of get the techniques?
So back then it was more a community based. Right now it's a digital community, but back then it was like a face-to-face community. You had to know who was doing things in your city, who had equipment that they could teach you. Or it wasn't like now that you go on YouTube and study anything, look up anything, how to make a cake, how to get the right 808, or how to get the right drums, the right swing. There's videos, tutorials. Back in the '90s, it wasn't like that. You had to either read through, trade magazines, or the Source magazine, Vibe magazine, when they interview producers, you read up on it like you're a fiend because you're trying to learn as much as possible new tricks and trades of or you used to go to different either meet producers, other producers and DJs at other studios, or other when I used to DJ, meet other DJs that they knew certain tricks that you didn't know, or they was older than you and they teach you what they know, and you teach them what you know, and it was like a collaborative thing.
So, how did you get involved with that community? It started in Lawrence, I'm assuming, right?
Yes. So there was local DJs like DJ Jabby Jab, DJ Clash. There was a lot of DJs, very talented DJs doing their thing. I used to run with some DJs too. We all had one turntable, one crate of records. I had friends, piece of DJ Furious. We had different specialty. I was more into the scratching and underground hip hop, but we had friends that was into house music, into dance music. So one had a speaker, one had one turntable, another friend had the other turntable. So we all came together and made like $75 and break it up at the end of the night.
Wow. Not much.
Yeah, it wasn't much. It was just to buy a sandwich and split it up.
Even back then, it wasn't much.
Yeah, it wasn't. So that's how we came together. Like everybody had, a group of friends had a piece of equipment and records, and we all came together to make it happen.
So you came together in Lawrence, but then at some point, how could you get into film and stuff like that? What did you do to take?
So
those
it was steps. So once you start growing I started growing out of parties and stuff like that, local parties. I started getting more into production. And my name started ringing in locally with the local rappers. There was a very good, talented, rest in peace to the name of Scientific. He got word of that I was making music, and he was one of the most professional in the '90s rapper out here. And he used to go to Boston and New York. So I will start traveling at teenage years, traveling to New York, taking the bus, and he introduced me to other producers that was professionals, and that's how I will get it, different mentorships and ask questions when we're in the studio, ask the engineers, ask the other producers that's already, they already had accolades and stuff.
Well,
like
how
that.
did you get into the room with them?
With the rappers, with the local rappers from here, like Scientific, he was one of the
Like
first.
they would just bring you into the room with these people who are high-powered music people.
And then one person introduced you to the next person. So Scientific, he's from Lawrence. He was one of the major players here. He introduced me to Edo G. Edo G was a big player in Boston, and he had a major record label. You can look him up. I Gotta Have It. He got classics. And he introduced me. So it was like a chamber. So I started doing music with Edo G. Edo G introduced me in one of the studio sessions in Boston, a Wall Studio. He introduced me to Big Shug. Big Shug is from Gangstar. He's on major records. He's part of Gangstar. Gangstar is globally. They're worldwide. And that's how I met Premier and Guru. And they was already professional. They was idols of mine. Those are people that I looked up to. So it's like anything, like in business, one person introduce you to one person, and then one person you meet the next person, like that.
Right.
Different sections and just networking sessions.
So there's good money in this, I take it.
Yes, especially if you get to the right either a hit, you got a hit song, or a show that repeats. That you want to be in one of those shows that repeat.
Like writing the theme song for the beginning
writing
of the
a
show.
theme song, like for ESPN or WWE or NBA. I do once in a while, not too often, but periodically I do UFC fights. I did New York Knicks, Madison Square Garden. So, as people start familiarizing and seeing your success, they introduce you to their friends and co-workers, and that's how it is. It's like business. One person leads to the other, and you're not guaranteed. But once you land in one of those placements, a show that either repeats or a song or end up in a movie of a trailer, that's where you get royalties every 3 months. You get, it just right now we're going through a transition with the digital and the streaming, so it's adjusting. It's not the same as the physical stuff in the '90s, but things are. You just got to work in different ways now because now you have internet, you have Web3, which is like an open field, pretty much. Whatever rules you want to play, and people are having more independent, more creative power. They can release their own music without
Well,
middle person.
lots of people are like bedroom composers, right? And they sit in their room and are trying to make it. And they're trying to get into doing this, but they tend to be doing it digitally a lot.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get in the current market? How do you think people who are sitting in their bedroom trying to make this work, how do they get into the community and start to actually get support and get money for doing what they're doing if they're talented?
I will say, stop recording yourself. Make videos. You could post it on YouTube, on your Instagram, on your Snap. Record yourself making music. Also, I will say I used to go to a lot of. I never participated in them, but beat battles. I went to a lot of them in Boston and in New York, and I went to Arizona and California. I went to different beat battles. And you pick up different styles and you talk to other producers that are doing different things. They show you what they're working on and you come with a better mind frame and a better creative thinking. I can't wait till I go back home. I used to love going to New York to D&D studio and seeing Premier do beats or other producers, the beat miners, other producers just making beats. So you're like, wow, I can't wait till I go home and be creative. So I will say first record yourself and then start other producers that's doing things wherever you're at locally, and then start going to beat battles and from there start networking at those different events.
So what are the kind of events you see in Lawrence happening now that would be like that? Like, are there beat battles going on here?
I don't think there's really beat battles. I think more I'm thinking of maybe starting something like that out here.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe setting up maybe once a month or something at a club that, on a dead night and just have different local producers start it up. I'm thinking of ideas like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in Lawrence, there really isn't no beat battles. You really have to go to Boston or New York or outside of Lawrence to join beat battles or even, it's good to go to them so you know what's your competition, how the crowd reacts to different beats and different vibes. It's very important to do that.
So how do you win a beat battle?
Usually, there's two things. I said is the judges. So they have celebrity judges and the crowd, but sometimes that's tricky too with the crowd because the crowd, if you're local, they're gonna go with the local people, or if you bring your crowd of 10 or 20 people, they're gonna be rooting for you. So it's a balance. I guess it's on the individual. There's no set.
It sounds like politics.
Yeah.
It's
It's like voting. It's like a voting system. So I just say I go for the experience, the vibes, because maybe a beat that's playing, the next person don't feel it, but you like it and inspire you to do. When you go back home to the studio, it makes you inspired to do something better or something similar. I will say something like that.
So you have kids now?
Yes, I have a 16-year-old teenager.
Are you teaching them to do this?
He likes music. He's very broad based because he always been around music. I think soon. I'm gonna start bringing him to open mics and we got him a guitar. So he's very musical. He's broad range. He listens to anything from Japanese musicians from the 60s and 70s, and he likes the newer music, the new rappers. So, and I teach him the 90s stuff, and he likes the underground stuff as well as the pop stuff and rock and roll. He listens to jazz. He's pretty open-minded, and I
Well, that's
like
good.
that. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he likes all types
Well,
of
I
music.
mean, with hip hop, all kinds of music end up in hip hop. I mean, you have
It is. It
elements
really,
of everything.
yes. It's folk music, right? Jazz, blues, rock.
yeah,
What else? What other type of music? Even ambient music, psychedelic rock.
yeah.
There's no anything that's funky is a hip hop sample.
ever-
Anything that's funky.
That reminds me of like earlier than us, like in the 70s, they had that Mozart piece on disco.
Mm-hmm.
It was called, oh no, Beethoven. It was a fifth of Beethoven,
Mm-hmm.
is what it was called. And it was like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, but disco. And I think hip hop has some of that too. where-
And disco too. I forgot
Yeah.
to mention
Disco,
that. Yeah,
yes.
yeah. It's more upbeat, but right after the disco era, it was late '70s into the '80s. That's when rap started. You know,
Right.
hip hop started towards the '80s. I would say '79, '80 when disco started dying off. But you're right. Disco, they sample disco beats.
Right. Well, so what do you do now? What's your process for, let's say you get a show, or do you have to just create a beat and then submit it to a show? How do you do that?
There's two ways. Usually it's the second way. Usually you create what you want. And a lot of the stuff that I've done that has placed on TV and film, it's been like that. I was just creating, just doing albums. And there's another way sometimes as you get better relationships with producers and directors of TV shows or advertisement companies, directors. They'll tell you what they're looking for. They'll give you like 3 examples. I want something that sounds like James Brown mixed with something popular now and add a little Latin on top. They'll give you briefs. So it's both ways, but
So you get hired
yeah.
to do a specific thing, and then you
or,
do it,
mhm,
and,
or they might send the same brief to like 10 producers to see.
right, and pick one.
Yeah, and pick. And sometimes you don't even hit. Sometimes they don't. They so busy editing the shows, and they do so many shows. These producers and directors that you don't even know when they pick your music. When you see the show or when you see your royalties, you're like, oh, I did music for the Kardashians, or I did music at UFC. Okay. So yeah, a lot of times you don't know till you get paid, or
Right.
yeah, because it's so busy and the turnaround. And the music part is mostly the last part. Unless it's like a musical, something that's like more, the music is up front, but mostly my music is in the background. It's the
Right.
background. Yeah, you hear it in the back. Or unless you have the theme show or it's the beginning of the show or the ending of the show, that's when they play more of the beats you hear. But it's mostly, when you hear dialogue, it's going to be in the background.
So, what would be advice you'd give to young people who want to get started in creating music for TV, movies, or just doing hip hop and beat battles and other stuff? What do you give as advice for people? How do you, if you were to mentor somebody, let's say?
I will say the 10,000 hours. I said that rule, I think, applies to any profession. You gotta really be consistent, believe in yourself and your craft, and watch. I to this day, in the '90s, I used to read, Blaze magazine, Rap Radio, different magazines, the Source magazines. Whenever they had a producer, Billboard, whether they had a producer's interview, I used to eat it up, reading it, what type of equipment they use,
Right.
what type of samples they use, what type of keyboard they use, samplers. I would say study as much as producers as possible, especially now that on YouTube you could go either whatever's recently popping, whatever's popping right now with the youngin', and watch legendary producers. That's advice I would say. Study both, so like that you could create your own lane and emulate at the beginning. Emulate who's your heroes, who inspires you to make music.
Right.
Make music like that and find your own lane. With time, I think you will find your lane, and from there, just post your music online, Instagram, Facebook, your friends, and just see what type of reaction. Which ones? Maybe start with 3 beats and see which one you like. Number 1, 2, 3. Put it on Snap, put it on Instagram, put it on social media, SoundCloud, Spotify. Distribute it yourself and see what happens, what type of reaction you get. That's my advice, and just keep studying and keep making music, being creative, and networking. That's a part that producers and composers and writers, they're not really, because we're always home, like you said, bedroom producers, or you're in the studio, we're like studio rats. We don't like really interacting with the public, but we have to grow our business.
That's true.
You have to. That human, no matter what type of social and new computers and digital form, that human that wants to, face to face, you'll never beat that. It's always, I think, it's number one, that human interaction, that we need that, and that's how one person introduces you to somebody else, and you network, and that's how you get places and grow.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for talking with me, and we'll have another episode coming up, and
definitely part 2.
Yeah, we'll probably have a part 2, and I think you were going to make some beats. We may tag that at the beginning of this or at the end, but we're going to hear some of the beats that
I'll do some live beats so you guys can see how the process to inspire.
But we're going to take a break, and we'll be back.
All right. Peace.